15 springs, a scholar's fate so drear. Malvern halls where dreams succumb to fear. Boots to brush each morning, endless chore. Hoping for freedom, just one turn more.
Hello.
Nighttime whispers
We are reading
they
through,
sting.
well, I am reading through
Endless
all of
grime on hands
the
that
things that
bristles
I can
bring.
find that C.S. Lewis wrote in the
Books to bear,
chronological
the
order
hours so
that he wrote
swiftly
them.
run. In
Um,
shadows cast, no
so,
solace for this sun.
for a quick
Oh, distant bells,
summary,
call me
we have started early in Lewis's life with the first letter that he wrote, at least the one that has been the earliest one that we know of, where he wrote to his father when he was away at school. So C.S. Lewis at this point in his life, where we've gotten up to where he's 15 years old in the series of videos that I've been making so far. And let's see, he attended boarding school in England called Wyvern. It was run by a headmaster who went insane, and the school closed down while Lewis was attending there, or maybe while he was away at the end of a term. Not because the guy went insane directly, but because either his wife got sick or his wife passed away, and so he opted not to be a schoolmaster anymore and to close the school down. From there, Lewis went on to a preparatory school, another boarding school in England called Cherbourg, which prepared him for a college that was in the same town as that school called Malvern, which he eventually went on to because he received a scholarship. This was a school that his brother had also attended before him. And we are at the point where he is in that school, but he initially liked it when he first started going there, but he has come to hate it because he is under constant demand to obviously get all of his schoolwork done. But on top of that, he is being bullied and harassed and basically abused by the prefects there at the school, the older boys. He writes about this later on as he's reflecting on it as an adult in his book Surprised by Joy. So once I get into that book, we can revisit this. But his father is trying to decide, what to do. We read earlier that he wrote a letter where he was writing about the difficulties that he was going through, and he even asked his father, "Hey, don't reach out to as I'm writing to you about all these troubles that I'm going through, don't tell the headmaster or the second in command here at the school about it, because it's only going to make things worse on me. If they try to enact any discipline on the students who are doing this to me, once the teacher is not looking, so to speak, these boys who are making my life difficult are going to make it into even more of a living hell as retribution for me, saying something about it. So I'm just going to try to, keep a stiff upper lip and, fight my way through it. But please, I've got to get out of this school if you can do anything to help me." So his dad reaches out to a lifelong friend of his, a guy named W.T. Kirkpatrick, who used to be the schoolmaster at the school that C.S. Lewis's dad went to when he was a boy, and who at the time was currently tutoring C.S. Lewis's older brother, Warnie, to help him prepare for some entrance exams into a place called the Sandhurst School that he wanted to go to, that is a school that prepares you for military service. So anyway, C.S. Lewis's dad is writing to W.T. Kirkpatrick saying, "Hey, what should I do? Should I just like pull him out of school now and send him to you and have you start tutoring him to prepare him, for higher level schooling and for, to choose a career and a way to make a living. Kirkpatrick, as we last read, said, don't you think it's a tad too early to do something like that? So there's some correspondence back and forth between Kirkpatrick and C.S. Lewis's father, Albert. And ultimately, Albert decides, I'm not going to send him to Kirkpatrick yet, but ultimately that's where I want him to go next. Some subtext behind this is also that Lewis isn't a very social boy. He finds more comfort in solitude, and so he doesn't like the company of people. And his father recognizes this as a weakness and something that needs to be developed. And so there's also that concern that, hey, taking him out of school and sending him to a single tutor that's just going to be focused on him, and there's no socialization between him and other people his age, is probably something that's not going to help develop that. So the longer that he can hold off on that, perhaps the better for C.S. Lewis's development. And so he comes to an agreement with C.S. Lewis of saying, hey, I want you to go back to this Malvern school for one more term. He frames it in such a way where he says we can do it as an experiment. If things are just going horribly wrong, then I will pull you out and we'll send you to, Kirkpatrick for your tutoring and for your the continuance of your education. So let's move on to the next letter that he writes to his father from this school that he's back at for the next term, Malvern College, postmarked the 31st of May, 1914. And actually, let me change this music. This is a song actually about Lewis's time here at the college. Let's move to an instrumental. How about that? There we go. That's pleasant. May 31st, 1914. My dear Pappy, many apologies again for the same epistolary shortcomings, but the days this term are so very full and are spent so much out of doors that it is very hard to polish off the weekly letter with anything like regularity. What a nuisance that old arm is, to be sure. However, I expect that when the fine weather sets in, it will improve. I am sorry that in asking you to procure my Attic Pentateuch, I was compelling you to embark upon a voyage at once perilous and disagreeable and arduous. Johnsonese again. I hope that by the time this letter reaches you, the study wall will have been replaced, and the stately hall of Libero will smile upon guest and inhabitant with its pristine splendor and hospitality. Okay, a couple of things there in that letter. Apparently, C.S. Lewis's dad's arm got a little sore or hurt in his mission to fulfill a request that C.S. Lewis had made in a prior letter to get him a copy of the New Testament. I think it was in Greek, have to go back and look, that belonged to his older brother, Warney. And so it looks like he fulfilled that request, hurt his arm in doing it, and it took a little bit more work than it initially took. I assume that this was in a letter that his father wrote back to him that he learned this. And then he mentions Libero. That's just a nickname for the house that he lives in. And then apparently, based on the context that I was gleaning from another letter, the context that I was picking up on was that there was some kind of fire in the house that requires some repair, perhaps knocking down a wall or rebuilding a wall. So I think that's what he's referring to here. There's a footnote here by Walter Hooper, the person who compiled all these letters. He says, in Surprised by Joy, chapter 7, Lewis said that while Smoogie was the major blessing of Malvern. Oh, I think I already read this in the last letter. Okay, yeah, that's a footnote about a previous letter. Smoogie, by the way, is an instructor at Malvern College that he really liked, probably one of his first favorite teachers, if not his first. Of course, in restoring the main library, you are careful to alter the appearance of the room as little as possible. It would be a pity if I came home to a strange house. In the meantime, I hope that the small library has been allowed to remain untouched. This week, I am glad to say that the Greek grammar has been going a good deal better. I hope this will continue, as it would be a pleasure to secure a good report to these people before I left. Happily, Browning has been ill at the sanatorium since last Monday, which has kept him out of mischief for 1 week, at least. Last week, I got out of the library the works of our present poet laureate, Bridges, who did not impress me a bit. But I have now struck better ground in Charlotte Bronte's Wuthering Heights, which, although melodramatic like all her books, shapes very well indeed. Two references here to authors. Robert Bridges, poet laureate from 1913. His poetry appeared in a single volume in 1912, and this was probably what Lewis was reading. Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights, is what he references in the last sentence. Before I close, I must request you forward a little of the ready, as owing to exorbitant subscriptions, fines, and the expenses of the summer term, our whole study has run out of cash. As long as one of us was flush, the other two could live upon him. But when all three are in this condition, it is impossible. I hope that your arm will not remain hors de combat very long. Son Jack. Ooh, this is a letter that he writes to his friend, Arthur Greaves, who lives back in Belfast, across the street from his childhood home. He writes from Malvern College on June 5th, 1914. He says, "Dear Arthur, I really must apologize for having kept such a long and unjustifiable silence. But the readiest means of mending that fault are those of writing fully and at once, which I now propose to do. To begin at the beginning. You had hardly been outside Little Lee for 20 minutes when a chance of not going back seemed to be held out to me, only, as you may guess, to be snatched away again. When we came to pack up my last few belongings, what should happen? But that no key was to be found for my trunk. High and low we searched, but not a sign of it. My father was in despair. How was I to go back? How long would it take to have a new lock fitted? For a few moments I had a wild hope of staying at home. What was my disgust when almost at last moment Annie turned up with the required article, and off I had to go. This is Annie Strahan. She was the cook housekeeper at Little Lee from 1911 to 1917. Since then, I have lived or existed as one does at school. How dreary all is. How dreary it is. I could make some shift to put up with the work, the discomfort, and the school feeding. Such inconveniences are only to be expected, but what irritates me more than anything else is the absolute lack of appreciation of anything like music or books, which prevails among the people whom I am forced to call my companions. Can you imagine what it is like to live for 12 weeks among boys, whose thoughts never rise above the dull daily round of cricket and work and eating? But I must not complain like this, I suppose. Malvern has its good points. It teaches one to appreciate home and to despise that sort of lifelessness. If I had never seen the horrible spectacle which these coarse, brainless English schoolboys present, there might be a danger of my sometimes becoming like that myself. But as it is, I have had warning enough for a lifetime." Luce goes on in other places, maybe Surprised by Joy, or in some of his other works, to talk about how much of a prideful little kid that he was. And I think we're seeing some of what he talks about in what he writes here as he's comparing himself, to all the other boys at school. All these things that he's saying about them may very well be true, but I think there's not much self-reflection in the young man that we see writing these books about, hey, what are my faults? I'm forced to call these people my companions. They don't have the same tastes and high refineries that I do in music or books. They're only interested in these lower, lowbrow things that I don't find interesting, and actually, quite honestly, shouldn't, because they're beneath me. I'm reading a little bit into what he's saying, but it just seems like that's a position that he's coming from, and Lewis himself has commented on this. Let's see. The letter continues. Another good point about Malvern is the library, which is one of the best stocked I have ever been in. Not that anyone but myself and 2 or 3 others care 2 pence about it, of course. I have here discovered an author exactly after my own heart, whom I am sure you would delight in, W.B. Yeats. He writes plays and poems of rare spirit and beauty about our old Irish mythology. I must really get my father to buy his books when I come home. His works have all got that strange, eerie feeling about them, of which we are both professed admirers. I must get hold of them, certainly. You can hardly tell how glad I was to hear that you were learning the theory. That you were learning theory. It is a positive shame that you should go about with all those lofty strains running in your head and yet never set pen to paper to perpetuate them. Of course, take the Loki Bound manuscript over to Bernard anytime you feel inclined to compose a little operatic music. Okay, so there's some footnotes here. Loki Bound is, I believe, the first work that Lewis wrote. And I don't know if the manuscript exists or not. I haven't done a ton of research on it, but I haven't found it yet. If it does exist, I want to incorporate it into this project and read through it. So here's what he says. Footnote 12. The tragedy, Norse in subject and Greek in form, which Lewis was writing. Yeah, Loki Bound. He says, take it over to Bernard anytime you feel inclined to compose a little operatic music to what he was writing. Bernard, the Greaves' home in Circular Road was directly across from Little Lee. I guess Bernard is the name of his house. So he's saying, hey, you can go take the manuscript from my house to your house if you want to try to compose some music to what I've written. Thank you very much indeed for undertaking the job of the gramophone. I suppose by this time it is restored to its former condition. It makes me furious to think that you're being able to walk about your house and ours and all the beautiful places we know in the country, while I am cooped up in this hot, ugly country of England. Where is your favorite walk? I hope that by this time you are quite recovered and are able to go about freely without fear of injury. County Down must be looking glorious just now. I can just picture the view of the Low and Cave Hill from beside the shepherd's hut. Sometime next holidays, you and I must take a journey there. Must make a journey up there before breakfast. Have you ever done that? The sunrise over the Hollywood Hills and the fresh stillness of the early morning are well worth the trouble of early rising, I can assure you. Since I have touched on the subject of health, I must ask a few questions of a disagreeable nature on a matter which I have very near my heart. I have now had no direct letter from my father for over 3 weeks, and I hear that he is very ill. I would be very thankful indeed if you would go over and see him sometimes and try to cheer him up. Then you could tell me exactly how he is and whether what I have heard has been exaggerated or not. Although I really don't deserve a reply to this after the shameful way I have treated you with regard to letters. But I feel sure you won't mind writing just a few lines to tell me about yourself and family and the state of various other things besides my father's health. As I am sure you are tired by this time of a long and melancholy letter, I will stop. Yours affectionately, Jack Lewis. The next letter is to his father, postmarked the 22nd of June, 1914. My dear Pappy, since I last wrote to you, I received with your knowledge, as I gather, a letter from Annie, short and comfortless enough to be sure, but still something to keep me from alarm. The most promising thing about her communication was that she promises me a letter from you at no very distant date. Do not force yourself to write unless you feel thoroughly fit, but when you can, let me have a rare budget of news and reflections to compensate for the weeks that the locust hath eaten. Above all, don't forget to tell me all about yourself. I will spare you the trite expression of sorrow and hope from your recovery. Between those who know each other so well, such remarks are out of place. And I am sure you have had enough of that sort of thing. I should like to encourage you to cheer up if I thought I should have any success in that line. I must at any rate mention one consoling circumstance, namely that it is now halfway through this dreary term, and is only 5 weeks till we shall be together again. This week you will get the report, and I hope and pray, not without confidence, that it will do nothing to add to your discomfort. I think I have now crossed the Rubicon in Greek grammar, and now happily arrived at the safe side of it. Mr. Smith, Smoogie, has been very kind to me indeed, and I think we shall part friends. This week I have been reading a most remarkable book which has created a great impression. It is the Upton Letters, a series of letters from a schoolmaster at Upton College to a friend whose health confines him in Madeira. This is Arthur Christopher Benson, the Upton Letters, published 1905. They purport to have been actually written on such an occasion and not for publication. And indeed, the utter absence of plot, or in some cases even of connection, make this seem to be true, although their wonderful beauty argues against it. But to come to my point, the great revelation of the book is the statement made somewhere that we, quote, ought not to write about our actions, but about our thoughts. How wonderfully true. We busy ourselves, you and I, telling each other about the weather and the little trivial happenings of each day, while the thoughts of our hearts, the really great experiences of ourselves, are seldom spoken of. Of course, this is rather rhetorical, and letters written entirely on those lines would tend to become monotonous. But the saying struck me so forcibly at the time that I thought I would mention it to you. This week, the natural course of our life has been torn up, as it were, by a cyclone in the form of Speech Day. I suppose you will be able to read Preston's speech in the Times, and I give your own verdict, and give your own verdict upon it. The Times, the 2nd of June, 1914, page 9, is where this speech appears. For my part, I did not see much merit in it. A few trite maxims, a few of the usual jokes, and that was all. In fact, if the truth must be told, Preston is not a big man. He is, as far as I can see, a learned and courtly gentleman of captivating manners, but not the person who can save the ruin of a tottering school. Malvern would seem to be fated by the gods, never to secure the right man as her headmaster. It is gratifying for me to think that I may live to see the end of this place. Perhaps that is an ungenerous thought, and I should hesitate to bestow my loathing so heartily on anything, even an inanimate object, if I did not think that it would be a real benefit for the country if this place were suppressed. At this time of year especially, one sees how awfully the place misses its mark. The whole of our spare time is given up to the great business of our life, cricket. Cricket is played with intense seriousness, and the players are usually in a very bad temper with themselves and everyone else, owing to the strain put on their minds by such a stupendous affair. Now, for me, work is the business of the term. I am tired when I come out of school and should like some recreation. Unfortunately, I am frankly and desperately bored by the recreations that are forced upon me. And yet, it is obvious that one must have compulsory games at school. But if you do, as it seems, they are given this ludicrous preponderance and become for some the absorbing interest of their life, and for others, a bogey and an incubus. I enclosed a few verses in imitation of Ovid, which were top of the form last week and well spoken of by Smoochie. Do you care for that meter? There are a great many rhymes in it, which makes it difficult, but the thing that I want to learn is, quote, to move easily in shackles. I wonder who said that. Do you know? Before I close, I must again make shift to bite the paternal ear as the 10 which you were kind enough to send, the 10 pounds which you were kind enough to send has been absorbed in paying off old debts and buying back for the study things which had been sold in the days of extreme embarrassment. I hope you won't think this extravagant. See you take care of yourself and write as soon as you are able. Your loving son, Jack. And then the following poem was enclosed with the letter above. Words underlined by Smoogie are in capital type, and his remarks are in brackets. I'll read the poem first and then go back and pull in what his comments are. First canto. meter copied from a chorus in Swinburne's Atalanta in Caledon. Okay, here's the name of the poem. It's called Ovid's Pars Estis Poci. That's P-A-R-S and then E-S-T-I-S and then P-A-U-C-I. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Actually, I have a decent idea that I am mispronouncing that. This is in the meter copied from a chorus in Swinburne's Atalanta in Caledon. Canto 1. Of the host, whom I named as friend ye alone, dear few were ashamed, in troubles unknown, to leave me deserted, but boldly ye cherished my cause as your own. Canto 2. My thanks shall endure the poor tribute I paid to a faith that was pure, till my ashes be laid in the urn, and the Stygian boatmen I seek an impalpable shade. Canto 3. But nay, for the days of a mortal are few, shall they limit your praise? Nay, rather to you each new generation shall offer, it ought be remembered, your due. Canto 4, and the final canto of this poem. For the lofty frame that my verses enfold, men still shall acclaim through ages untold. And still shall they speak of your virtue, your honor, they still shall uphold. Let's see, it says that his comments, they're underlined. The underlined items are in capital type and his remarks are in brackets. So in the first canto, of the host whom I named, he underlines I named. And then down at the very bottom, he just puts in brackets, yes. So apparently he liked that one. He underlines nothing in the second canto. My thanks shall endure the poor tribute I paid to a faith that was pure till my ashes be laid in the urn, and the Stygian boatman I seek an impalpable shade. In brackets, his instructor writes, yes, but not Ovid. I don't know anything about Ovid, so I can't comment one way or the other on what he's talking about here. He leaves no commentary on the third canto, so I guess that one's fine, or it's not remarkable in any way. And then the last canto, he just, let's see, in brackets, the first thing he writes for the first part, in response to this part, for the lofty frame, he puts in brackets, hardly scans. Not sure exactly what he means by that. And then at the very end of the canto, he just says yes. So there are his comments. That's all I really have time for today. So I will stop there. The next letter is one that is to his father that I'll pick up on next time. But we are moving along through what looks to be shaping up as C.S. Lewis's last term at Malvern College. And you can tell very clearly from his last letter to his friend Arthur Greaves and to his father that he doesn't really like the place. That I'll play to close this out.
15 springs, a scholar's fate so clear. Malvern halls where dreams succumb to fear.
Actually, 1 second. Let me pause that. Yeah, so this is a song about him not enjoying his time at Malvern and hoping that the term will end and he can get out of there. So I'll close with that. Thanks, everybody.
15 springs, a scholar's fate so drear. Malvern halls where dreams succumb to fear. Boots to brush each morning, endless chore. Hoping for freedom, just one turn more. Nighttime whispers, cold and cruel, they sting. Endless grime on hands the bristles bring. Books to bear The hours so swiftly run, in shadows cast no solace for this sun. Oh, distant bells, call me away to lands where dreams and hopes can stay. The scholar's heart, so weary and thin, waits for the dawn to set free within. Pages turn neath candles' ghostly gleam, lines of wisdom blurred in twilight's dream. Quill and parchment, heavy is the load, walking paths where countless tears have flowed. In the echo of the halls, a silent plea for the chains of youth to set this spirit free. Winds of autumn whisper soft and kind, sing a song of hope to my restless mind. Oh, distant bells, call me away to lands where dreams and hopes can stay. The scholar's heart, so weary and thin, waits for the dawn to set free within. Pages turn